Welcome to Scott Talks. I'm here with Eric Zimmer. Thank you, Eric, for joining us. What a great conversation you and Laura had yesterday. Eric is a certified interfaith spiritual director. And we'll talk a little bit about that, a behavior coach. You're a podcast host, a writer, and you seem like a genuinely just mellow, easy to be around person. And I'm really glad to have you on the show.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, man.
He's a calming presence.
A calming presence. And your website is called The One You Feed, and it's based on a parable about the wolf that you feed, the good wolf or the bad wolf. And I wanted you to maybe just talk a little bit about what that might mean to the general population, to someone who might not understand sort of what spiritual living is or what recovery is. And, I really appreciate the idea that you're trying to sort of bring this spiritual concept and broaden it and make it more accessible. You know, I think one of the things I heard you and Laura talk about was that, and I feel like this is true for me, but that one of the benefits of 12-step recovery is that incredible foundation that we get to sort of separate the self from the intended self, from what's happening in life, and the ability to sort of make changes. And your idea of which wolf you feed gives someone a direction and an idea to tap into that. And maybe you could clear that up for me a little bit. But
sure. I mean, I think it's a parable, and the good thing about a parable is when you hear one, you immediately, if it's a good parable, you immediately know what it means. You're like, oh yeah, of course. Like,
right.
Which wolf wins, the good one or the bad one? Well, the wolf that we feed. And I think on its surface, it's a pretty straightforward statement that our choices matter. That we have the choice in what sort of lives we create for ourselves. The things that we think, the things that we do, the way that we act, create, better or worse lives based on those. It's not that everything is in our control and we can control everything, but there's an awful lot that we do have the ability to influence. And so I think that's why I love that parable. I first heard it in recovery, like I think you said you might have.
Yeah, I think we talked earlier, and I was saying that, one of the things I think that you said that's really important is that that choice. When you say choice, like when I decide which wolf I'm going to feed, that choice to me, what I've come to understand in my 54 years and my little bit of time in this inward journey, is that choice is freedom. It's a freedom that I never had ever seen as freedom. And because I feel like before I knew about, let's just use the parable as a metaphor, the choice of which wolf to feed, I was super just responsive to the world and reactive.
Yeah.
And do you find that realization is true for a lot of people that you work with or people that come to you, the ability to make a choice?
Yeah, I mean, choice is a really interesting idea because, do we all have the same level or ability to choose? I think is a really interesting question, because I know that my choice around picking up alcohol or drugs today feels radically different than the amount of choice I had 15 years ago. Mm-hmm. Right? So something has shifted there, but even then there was some amount of choice, right? Like I ultimately I did or I didn't, and so I think choice is something I think a lot about. But in order to make a choice, like you're saying, we have to be aware that there is one.
Right.
And I think what you said there is really, really important, which is recognizing that I do have a choice. Yeah. And even if I think there's a really interesting step that in between there, which is recognizing, like, maybe I have the choice, or here's the choice I would like to make. I may not even be to the point yet where I know how to make it, or I may not make it consistently. I don't want to snap at my kids so much.
Right.
Okay. Well, I may not be at the point where that happens all the way, but just even going, that's what I want. That's the choice I want to make, opens up possibility that isn't there when we think that we have to snap at our kids, or we think it's our kids' fault that we snap at them, or, so recognizing that choice is available is a really important step. And then over time, by practicing, we can I think, get better in our ability to choose.
Yeah, the other thing you said, and this relates to what you were just talking about, is that spirituality to you, if we take all of the, sort of formal presentations of it, is connectedness to others. And I think one of the things I heard, what you said is connectedness to a lot of things, just something greater. And I loved sort of the story you just told was the connected, like showing up for your kids the way you'd like to choose, like the way you would choose to show up for them, and not show up for them and then walk away and go, God, I could have done that better, and not be able to access that. And I think that that choice of living, when I came around and got ready for this program, at first I thought, I was here because of the choices I made when I drank. What I soon came to realize, what the drinking was the result of the inability to make a choice in my relationships. I was very alone when I got here, and the regret was that I couldn't be the person I wanted to be, and I just couldn't quite figure it out. I was really well intended. I really, meant well, but I couldn't change the way I reacted to things. And once I began to make that change and be able to show up for people, it became less about the drinking for me and more about the connectedness and the spirituality. And I'm just so glad that you kind of reframed that connectedness piece to spirituality, because I think, like you and Laura talked about, it gets kind of shoved down into a black and white category, like spirituality means religion, or it means something unattainable. It means something that that you actually take yourself out of society to be a part of, and then come back in when you're spiritual and ready. And the practicality for me has been that being kind to people who aren't kind, being loving to people when I'm upset, showing up and being the person that I want to be versus, or regardless of how I feel, it feels the most gratifying, to me now. And it feels to me kind of like that's what Feeding the Wolf is about. It's a little bit about having a choice and turning people onto that. And you found quite a following of people, huh? You have a lot of people who are very interested in this idea, big enough that you've decided that this is your true purpose, huh?
Yeah. I mean, I started this show, I think, like I said, 2014, so 9 years ago. And I started it, I was just not in a good spot. I was sober, but I had started a company, and that company had failed. I was in a bad marriage, and I just was struggling myself, and I just thought, if I interview somebody every week about these kind of ideas, I'll read their book, and I'll just be swimming in this sort of stuff. And I just knew that would be good for me. And I had no real idea then that it would become my life's work or anything like that, but I feel extraordinarily fortunate that it has.
Yeah, you seem immersed in it, and yeah, you seem very centered for it, and we're really grateful to have you on the show to talk about it. One of the things that The Only One in the Room is about is bringing, when people feel alone in a certain situation, I think they feel separated from the world, and part of telling the story is to bring others into it so they can find presence. And it's a little bit of more of an outlier thing of what you're doing, where I get to tell my story and people get to go, hey, I felt like that before, or I've done that before. And then all of a sudden, ironically, they don't feel alone anymore. And so
one of the most beautiful things in the world, I think, is when someone has that moment and they go, oh, I'm not alone.
Right.
I'm not the only one, like it's, I just, I love seeing that happen to people.
Yeah. Well, thank you again for being on the show, and you guys need to check out the One You Feed podcast. We'll have all of Eric's information in our show notes, and you got to go back to the episode. And I do want to ask you one more thing. Now, I know you have a big following of people, and you get to talk a lot about other people, but what is one thing about yourself that you don't think the people that listen to you might know about you?
Oh boy. Let's see.
That you would want to share, I'm not to put you on the line, but just to.
Well, okay. This is one maybe. All the music that's in our show is composed by either myself and Chris, or one or the other of us. So we have intro, outro music, and we have music breaks in every episode, and that's all original music that we make.
Ah, there
And
you go.
so,
Fun new fact for Eric Zimmer. That's
I
fantastic.
like it.
Yeah, I wish I could do that, honey. Eric, thank you so much, man.
Thank you,
Thank
Eric.
you, Scott.
All right.
Thank you, Laura.